So we're beginning a brand new teaching series today. The first Sunday of a new decade, the first Sunday of a new year. And if you're new here, what a teaching series is what we do is we grab a theme out of the Bible and then we break it down into individual messages, individual talks. It's sort of like a Netflix, show. Like you get on Netflix and you've got your favorite, drama or whatever it may be, and you don't want to miss an episode. You guys are so addicted to them. We binge watch them, you know what I'm saying? The way this series works, the way our teaching series works, is they stack on top of each other. And so one truth stacks into another. And today, we're starting a new teaching series called Little Foxes. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be gathering around a big idea. We're going to be talking about the small distractions that lead to great destruction. Let me say it again. We're going to be talking about the small distractions that lead to great destruction. In today's episode, if you will, today's talk is entitled Catch the Foxes. Catch the foxes. If you have a copy of Scripture, we're going to find ourselves in the book of the Song of Solomon. Song of Solomon. And we're going to be in chapter 2. We're only going to read one verse out of there today. If you don't have a Bible, listen, don't worry about it. Scripture is going to be on the screen behind me. We're going to follow along, read it. We're going to listen in. We're going to lean into what God wants to say to us. Song of Solomon, chapter 2. Verse 15, here's how it reads. Catch the foxes for us, the little foxes that spoil the vineyards, for our vineyards are in blossom. The Song of Solomon is one of the smallest books in all the Bible. There's only 117 verses. It's known in the Old Testament as being a part of wisdom literature. Another part of the wisdom literature would be like Proverbs or Job or Ecclesiastes, part of the Psalms. And of course, as we look at Solomon, you're reading a verse like this, catch the foxes, the little foxes, that spoil the vineyards, for our vineyards are in blossom. You kind of look and go, what is that all about? What is going on in this letter? And most scholars believe that Song of Solomon is simply a conversation between two lovers. And those two lovers is Solomon, of course, and one of his many wives, by the way, but his wife who was the Pharaoh of Egypt's daughter. And so when we're reading the Song of Solomon, essentially what we're doing is we're listening in on the conversation of two lovers. And in this first verse that we read today, it's coming from the voice of the lady, okay? And if you don't think that the Bible speaks to our sexuality and our sexual desires, then you have not read Song of Solomon. If you have not understood the book of Song of Solomon. Song of Solomon rates ghost pepper hot, okay? On the spicy index of the books in the Bible, okay? If you will actually read it and try to understand it, there's no way you read through Solomon, the Song of Solomon, without blushing. Okay, there's a lot going on in this book, and in the middle of this conversation that we find between these two lovers, this woman calls to our attention and to her lover's attention little foxes. She says, "Catch the foxes, the little foxes," and what we see in this context are that these little foxes have the ability to create great destruction. And they come to destroy what they have between each other. And in the context of their relationship, the little foxes are other men. Come on, somebody. Jealousy kicking in right now. Okay? There are other men coming around in this couple's relationship. And she's sort of raising the red flag, if you will, and saying, hey, there's other guys, they're creeping, they're coming in, they're trying to get in between me and you. Catch them, catch the foxes, because they come to ruin the vineyard, our relationship, what we have, had hard work together in building. These little foxes are coming in and they're threatening. They have the ability to destroy our relationship. And so we have a picture in this story of little foxes having the ability to create great destruction. And the question that we are going to wrestle with in this series is, what are the little foxes in your life? Every single one of us have little foxes running around in our lives, threatening to destroy and to steal and to kill areas of our lives. You see, foxes were known and are known to get in a vineyard. And when they get in a vineyard, they get around the grapevine and they'll dig around the grapevine. And they're looking for the tender shoots. They're going to eat those tender shoots, or they're going to come in right around the time that the grapes are blooming. There's blossoms on the vine, and they're going to come and they're going to rob the grapevine. They're going to rob the vineyard of the fruit. And the result is one of two things. Either the grapevine stops producing fruit, or the fox kills the grapevine altogether. What we understand, though, is that something so small as a little fox carries the potential for great destruction. So again, the question that we have to ask ourselves is what are the little foxes in our lives? And the thing about a fox is fox are stealth. Fox are not, overt. They kind of work covertly. They're not obvious. They work in the cover of the dark. And because of that, here's the thing, most of us are completely unaware of the foxes that are stealing from us. The foxes that are robbing the fruit from our lives. The areas in our lives that should be producing healthy things. These little distracting foxes come in and they steal and they rob and they kill. And so this is a phrase that I just want us to grab a hold of, because we're going to see this phrase show up every week. And I think if we can allow this phrase and the truth of this phrase and the weight of this phrase to come alive in our hearts, our 2020 will be like no other year that we've ever lived on this earth. And here's the phrase. It's simple. I've already alluded to it already once. Small distractions can lead to great destruction. Can we say that together on the count of three? 1, 2, 3. Small distractions can lead to great destruction. And most of these little foxes in our lives, again, they operate on the sly. They're not overt or obvious. They're always working in the dark. Maybe you've heard the phrase, he's sly as a fox, right? Or she's sly as a fox. That's a simile. It is what it's really saying is that person is dishonest. That person is someone who's sneaky. Maybe you know someone like that. I think every junior high boy is sly as a fox, okay? They're just sneaky. You can't trust them, trust me. And so it means that someone is crafty or they're dishonest. Sly as a fox has been a traditional saying for hundreds of years. Aesop's fables, always alludes to a fox, and in all those fables, the fox, is the type of animal who is cunning and overt and deceptive. And of course, we see tons of reference, if you're a Shakespeare person, we see tons of reference in Shakespeare literature about the fox. And again, the way that Shakespeare paints a fox is an animal that is deceptive and covert, and one that can't be trusted. Okay, so they'll present themselves as one thing when in the reality there's something completely different. And this is why you and I must understand that distractions in our life are sly as a fox. Most of us are completely unaware of the foxes that are coming in and are stealing from us because they come in subtly, deceptively to make you think that one little distraction, it won't matter. Just giving my attention over here for just this one moment, just this one time, it won't really matter. And I want you to lean in to this thought. I would suggest to you today that distraction is one of the greatest enemies of your soul. Distraction. Distraction is one of the greatest enemies of your soul. And one of the devil's greatest attacks is to distract. Sometimes I like to say things that rhyme. One of the devil's greatest attacks is to distract. And so what do we have to do? We have to first recognize distractions in our lives for what they are so that we can catch the fox. And here's the thing. It's not that most of us here have anything against God and God's best for our life. It's not that most of us here have anything against being spiritually or emotionally healthy. We would like all of these things. It's just that we are habitually preoccupied by distraction to have any of these show up on our radar. We are so distracted, we have no idea that we're being robbed. We're so distracted that we have no idea that there are areas in our lives where God intended there to be health and fruit and blessing, but because we're so distracted, the opposite of those things is true in our lives. A poet and playwright put it this way. T.S. Eliot said, "We are distracted from distraction by distraction." We're distracted from distraction by distraction. What's that mean? No one has all of us. Our families don't have all of us. I know it seems like work has all of us, but the truth be known, work doesn't have all of us. God certainly doesn't have all of us. Why? Because we're distracted by distraction from distraction. And here's the thing, for many of us here today, the danger is not that we are going to renounce our faith. It's just that we live such distracted lives that we will just settle for a mediocre version of our faith. And that's the picture for a lot of us and what our relationship with God looks like. Some of you had a really hard 2019, and you're hanging on by a thread. You have some disappointments with people and with God. And in your mind, you're kind of upset with God. You're put out by people. You've had the proverbial rug pulled out from under you over and over and over again. And even for you, the danger is not that you're going to just say, well, I renounce my faith. The danger for you is that you will just skim faith. You'll just have a little bit of faith. And you'll never experience the life that God created you to experience. We have been so distracted, listen to me, by the things on the outside that we have no idea what's going on the inside. We've been so distracted on the outside that we're living inverse lives. And what I mean by that is we pay so close attention to everything that's going on the outside because we're distracted. And the distractions in our lives, the things that pull on us publicly, there's an infinite amount of temptations, are there not? I mean, the world caters things to us. And matter of fact, we don't value things as much anymore unless it's catered to us. It's got to be, completely catered to us. And the more catered to us, then the more it has our attention. And so we run around trying to build up our public lives when all along the internal stuff, the stuff on the inside, you're in trouble. You're distracted. The fox is in the hen house, people. And he's stealing, and he's killing, and he's robbing. Okay? So I want you to consider your desire. One famous thought is from a guy who said, I can't get no satisfaction, right? Come on. Just think about desire for a minute. Desire, it's infinite. In other words, there is no bottom, there is no end to desire. It's like when you go to a restaurant and they give you bottomless chips and salsa. Come on, somebody. Now you're talking my language. Just keep them coming, you know what I mean? Anywhere it's got free refills, let's go, you know? This is desire in our lives. We have an infinite amount of desire. Now, where this is a challenge is that you are finite. Desire is infinite without a bottom, without an end. You are finite, which means you have a bottom, not this one. You have an end. You are limited. And maybe some of you this last week, in efforts of, a New Year's resolution, you've been working out and you realize just how limited your legs are, right? You're realizing, yes, I am finite. Things don't work like they used to. My lungs are finite. That's what I'm thinking as I've been trying to work out. I'm like, yes, definitely finite. I'm very aware of my finiteness. Thank you very much. But here's the challenge. Desire infinite. You're wired that way. God created every single one of us to have desire that cannot be satisfied in what the world offers. Cannot, will not. But He created us as finite beings. And so the challenge comes as we will run around trying to feel desire. And when we get the thing that we thought we needed or we thought we wanted, what do we realize? I'm still not satisfied. There's never enough. I can't get no satisfaction. I got to have more. The thing I thought I wanted, it's not what I wanted. Come on, some of you guys are old enough now that you've been back to, high school reunions. And in high school, you thought he was the one, and you saw him at your high school reunion and said, thank God for unanswered prayers. Come on. Right? You're like, the things that we think we want, we get them, and we're like, not what I wanted. Right? That's desire. It's infinite. You're never satisfied. You're finite. There is a bottom. And God has created you and me like this intentionally. And the little foxes, listen to me, lean in on this. The little foxes in your life are those distractions on the outside that keep you from being aware of what's going on the inside. It's the distractions on the outside. And we need to learn to recognize these outside distractions. We need to see them for what they are. We need to learn to find ourselves in a place daily. This isn't a one and done decision. This is a daily decision. This is a daily practice. Listen, there is no such thing as a life hack for soul care. No such thing. This is a day-to-day deal. If you came today for 3 steps to a better life, and I was going to wrap it up like a tiny, pretty little present bow and present it to you, you're not getting it today. Okay? What we're going to talk about in this series is something that is hard, but so vital. I'm talking about inside work. I'm talking about soul care. Author Gordon MacDonald, in his book, Ordering Your Private World, he discusses 2 different worlds that shape us. And this is what he says. We must come to see ourselves as living in 2 very different worlds. Our outer or our public world is easier to deal with. It's much more measurable, visible, and expandable. Our outer world consists of work, play, possessions, and a host of acquaintances that make up a social network. It's the part of our existence easiest to evaluate in terms of success, popularity, wealth, and beauty. But our inner world is more spiritual in nature. Here is the center in which choices and values can be determined, where solitude and reflection might be pursued. It is a place for conduction, worship, and confession, a place or a spot where the moral and spiritual pollution of the times need not penetrate. Most of us have a pretty good handle on our public world. It's what we focus on. It's what we see in the first moment we wake up and we go to the mirror. We are very aware of our public world. And there are a myriad of options for you to learn to, put your public world in order. We have these fancy new planners that we go. We have apps that help us, create to-do lists and task lists. We have all these things that help us and really grab our attention to focus on the public world, but so many of us have nothing working on the inside. We do nothing to work on what is actually carrying what's happening on the outside. So our public world, just get this picture, our public world, all those things that Gordon MacDonald mentioned, our popularity, our work, our well-being, what everybody sees. Our public world, it's always pulling on us. It's always telling us to build it, to make it greater, to keep up with the Joneses. And listen, all those things are well and good. But the question is, the things in your life that you are adding to your life to build your public world, do you have the inner strength? Do you have the inner stability to withhold the weight that's coming your way? And I believe that the greatest battleground of our age is the private world of the individual. It's the private world. Your greatest battleground is your private world. And again, most of us are completely unaware that your private world even exists and that there are little foxes distracting you. You are so distracted that you think life is really about the public world. And my friends, we've been fooled. We have been duped. I just want you to think about our world. Thanks to our mobile devices, every waking hour we are available. People can get to us anywhere and everywhere. It's just the way the world is wired, and most of us are connected into it. We have completely lost sight of the importance in the care of our private world. And because of that, our lives are a sinkhole waiting to happen. A sinkhole happens when there's a period of a drought. And under the ground, maybe there is typically water running. But when the drought comes, the water dries up, leaving great holes under the ground. Where there was support under the ground, now there is no support. I've got a couple of pictures of some sinkholes. One is a picture of a house that has been swallowed. On the outside, I can promise you when they built this house, they had no idea what was going on underground. They had no idea that over time, over many years, that there's an erosion taking place underneath the ground, that what's going on the inside underneath the ground is slowly eroding, and someday it's going to collapse under the weight of the home. There's another picture of a house, and maybe this is what your life looks like. It hasn't completely consumed you yet, and maybe the hole hasn't opened up all the way, but it's on the verge, and your life is on the verge of collapse. Sinkholes, again, they occur when underground streams, they dry away. And you and I, we're intended to have streams of living water constantly running in our lives. We are intended, that the stream of living water is the Holy Spirit. The stream of living water is Jesus, and we're meant to have these streams constantly running. And when we don't do soul care, when we don't take care of what's going on, what happens? We go through seasons of drought. We go through seasons of neglecting soul care. And on the outside, the house may look great. And on the outside, the career and the family may look great. But on the inside, there's danger lurking. And isn't it true? I want you to think about in your own life that you bear weight every day. You carry weight. As a matter of fact, some of you have added more weight and you're still just 1 week into the new year. Just think about it. Home adds weight. School adds weight. Relationships add weight. Marriage adds weight. Career adds weight. Beer and wine adds weight. Just making sure you're listening. All right. Yeah. It all adds weight. It all adds weight. And listen, you can carry it until you can't. And you can hold it up until you can't, until the weight becomes too much, until the sinkhole of your soul opens up. We live with a lie, and we think that the most publicly active are the most important. This is the way our world works. This is the way we value people. The guy, the girl, the person who's got most going on and has the most stuff and has the bigger house and lives a more, quote, blessed life. What they have going on publicly, the one who's most publicly active is the most important. It's the way our world runs. And so because of this, we have all wake up every day and we prioritize our life for the public. We prioritize our life around what does he think and what does she think? And how do I want to appear? And how do I want to come off to people? And we run around, we're trying to satisfy an infinite amount of desires. When the reality is, all we're doing is we're running ourselves ragged. Emotionally, spiritually, we're running ourselves ragged. Some of us physically. You're tired. But because of the public perception, you can't let anyone know that. Your wife can't know it. Your boss can't know it. You don't want your kids to know it because you have so prioritized your public life and all the while. The reality is this. The most publicly active is the most at risk. If my life is prioritized by public activity, then you and I are most at risk for a sinkhole in our soul. The collapse is coming. It's just a matter of time. Now, of course, the answer is not to be a recluse and run away and live a monk, style kind of life. But what happens when we live our lives constantly building the public and never taking care of the inner world is eventually it all falls down. And sadly, I've known many people that this has happened to, and you do too. You know people who have had a collapse. It came out of nowhere. They had a moral failure. Depression grabbed a hold of them so hard in an area. We've seen people's worlds just fall apart. One person I know had a hidden pornography addiction, and he allowed sexual impurity to slowly erode away his character and his sensitivity to sexual purity. His sexual appetite and habits became a form of escape for him. So as the weight was added, his form of escape was pornography. He didn't even realize the reality of what was taking place. It was sly as a fox. It was deceptive. No one else really knows. This is my secret sin. But slowly what was happening is that the character, the stuff that holds you up, was slowly eroding. On the outside, his career was soaring. He was advancing in every way. It looked as if his marriage was thriving. But one day, his sexual addiction moved from being something that he did alone, and he did what everyone around him would have said he could have never done. In a moment of sexual excitement, he actually had a sexual encounter with a coworker at work. And in a moment, his world imploded. It all collapsed. Why? All because a little fox was ignored. All because listen to me, all because the priority of his life was his public image. Public image. And I'm not saying that we don't need to be aware of how we come off. And I'm not saying that we don't need to be aware of our public life. But what I'm saying is that you and I, if we're not careful, we will live inverted lives and we'll pay so much attention to the public, we'll disregard and neglect the private, and inevitably we're living a life in which a sinkhole is on the horizon. Jesus, knowing this about you and knowing this about me, knowing that we have the propensity for this to happen, he talks about soul care. He talks about inner strength. He talks about his ability to provide strength for you in the storm and in the hard times. And we find one example of this in the book of Mark chapter 4. And beginning in verse 35, I just want to read this, and it's a story that most of you are familiar with. But on that day it says, when evening had come, he said to them, "Let us go across to the other side." And leaving the crowd, they took him with them in the boat, just as he was, and the other boats were with him. And a great windstorm arose, and the waves were breaking into the boat, so that the boat was already filling. But he was in the stern, asleep on the cushion. You see this contrast between Jesus in the storm and his disciples in the storm. Jesus is asleep. His disciples are in panic. And they woke him up saying, "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" And he awoke and he rebuked the wind and said to the sea, "Peace, be still." And the wind ceased and there was a great calm. And he said to them, "Why are you so afraid? Have you still no faith?" And they were filled with great fear, and they said to one another, "Who then is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him?" And Jesus asked them the question that's central to all their personal growth and their ability to pass the distraction of the storm. And that question is the same question he asked you. Why are you so afraid? And do you still have no faith? In other words, what he's saying to his disciples is, where's your inner strength, boys? If I'm not afraid, why are you afraid? If I'm not in panic, why are you in panic? Jesus was bothered by their response, and he had reason to be bothered. He was bothered because it wasn't like they had just met. The disciples had seen him do a lot of things. They had walked with him. He had taught them a lot up until this point. And here they are in the middle of a lake, and a storm comes by. And it was a bad storm. And it had to be a bad storm for these disciples to be alarmed. And in the moment, what happens is they have a collapse of their soul. They don't have the inner strength to face the fear of the storm. And the storm's going to come in your life. The storm has come in your life. The storm's going to come in my life. And there's been storms in my life. And Jesus wants you and he wants me to have the kind of life that has the strength, not just to go through the storm, but actually prevail in the storm. I mean, what does it look like to go through the year where that when the storm hits, you don't just get through the storm, you prevail through the storm? I mean, what's it look like to have a kind of confidence and peace? Can I just tell you what it's going to take? It's going to take you and it's going to take me catching the foxes. Being aware of the distractions from the outside. This is why Paul said in Philippians 4:13 with great confidence, he says, "I can do all things through him who gives me strength." All things. I can face down the storm. I can go through this divorce. I can go through this sickness. I can face down the loneliness. Whatever it is, the fear, the anxiety, whatever it is, I can do all things. And I can't do it by focusing in on the public, but I can do it by faith. I can do it by placing my desire on the one who can match the infinite options of my desire. You see, you are finite, but God is infinite. And could it be that God created you with infinite desire to match up with His infinite nature? There is an endless amount of growth ahead of you. There's an endless amount of fruit bearing and life. I don't care how old you are, or what stage of life you are in, or how young you are. But we must recognize the little foxes. We have to learn to pay attention to the little foxes in our life. We have to catch the little foxes every day. Let me ask you a question, just by way of closing our thoughts together. What do you want? What do you want? Most of us don't know. I mean, we have some ideas of some things we want. And we're going to answer that question in a different way, every single one of us. The older you get, the less you want. The younger you are, the more options you see. I need to try this and that. But here's what's true about all of us, about what we want. We want it our way. Come on, somebody. Right? We want it our way. And we want to do what we want to do. And live your life that way. And you're going to chase foxes all your life. You're going to run around never satisfied. There's never going to be enough. And this comes back to desire. It comes back to the understanding that desire is infinite. And this is why we've got to learn to see a fox for what it is. A distraction. And over the next several weeks, we're going to actually call some of those foxes by name. We're going to see those foxes. We're going to look at the fox of hurry. Come on, the fox of decision making. I'm tired of making decisions. How about y'all? The fox of distractions everywhere around us. And we're going to learn to catch the fox. But where it begins is us being honest. You know, this message isn't a 1, 2, 3 point, move on, I feel good about myself. This message is intended to send you out of here thinking about what's going on the inside. Slow down. Listen. Ask tough questions about yourself. What's going on the inside? How are you doing emotionally? How are you doing spiritually? Do you even know? Probably not. And I believe that God has brought us here together as a faith family to walk through this process together. I'm excited about the coming weeks. Don't miss it, just like you don't mix an episode of your favorite Netflix show. Stick with us. The truths are going to stack. Corrie ten Boom once said that if the devil can't make you sin, he'll make you busy. The effect's the same. You'll lose your connectivity to God. You lose your connectivity to those who are most important to you. And you lose your connectivity even to your own soul. Come on, wake up. The foxes are in the vineyard. Let's catch them. Let's do something about them, but it begins by opening our eyes. Won't you pray with me just for the next closing moments? I believe that this is a divine moment, a moment where God is wanting to do what only He can do, and that's speak to your soul. And would you maybe just take a moment and say, God, I want to confess that I've been distracted. This is hard for a lot of men because we are good at compartmentalizing our emotions and our feelings. But the reality is what we're really doing is just ignoring it. What are you feeling right now? Maybe we just ask God, would you open my eyes to the little foxes in my life, to the things that are distracting me from what's most important? For the others of you here today, you need to rest and have the confidence in that you're loved, and that you don't have to perform, and you don't have to do anything for God to love you more. You need just to simply relax, rest, and recover in His love for you. You need some soul care.